In this video, I'll show you how to get from $0 to $30,000 a month using Google Ads for your e-commerce store. And it doesn't matter whether you're making good sales via other channels already and now you want to get started on Google Ads as well, or whether your overall store, your overall business is brand new and now you want to actually get started and make your first few sales. So as long as you are not an established e-commerce store on Google Ads, then this video is for you. With that being said, let's start right away. And basically the example for this video was this very recent client that we started to work with, and after a fairly short time frame we now cracked the threshold of 30k plus, because that's actually in euros. So looking at about a 30k sales volume, of course always depending on the currency exchange rate, at a very healthy roundabout 4x ROAS, right? And when we now look at the situation, there are a few problems, and right after that I will share the step-by-step, step 1 to 5 to get there. The typical problems include, when you start, not having enough search term data, right? You don't know exactly what people search for. Yes, you have the keyword planner, but you don't have like real world up-to-date data from today, let's say. You have no conversion data, which limits your optimization. So if Google doesn't know what a conversion looks like with your store, then of course Google cannot optimize for conversions. Typically you have fairly low budgets when you start. Of course, this doesn't allow you to do like 1,000 things at once. You might be overwhelmed, like where to start in the first place. And last but not least, one very common problem is like overspending quickly. A lot of people that message me like, hey, I've spent 5,000 now, or 10,000 or 3,000 and my budget is almost gone. Have I done the wrong things, or things like that? So those are the key problems. And with these problems in mind, let's look at the step-by-step approach for that strategy. And we start obviously at $0, right? So what should you do immediately? Like the first things that you should focus on? Well, the first things are a initial keyword research and the setup of your shopping feed. So let's say you sell something like TV stands, right? In this example here, I searched for TV stands. If you sell TV stands and related furniture, first of all, before you run your first campaign, even if it's a shopping campaign, and by the way, don't mind the actual keywords here, they don't matter for the moment, you should do a keyword research and just understand what's the general pattern of that people use to search for your product, right? What are some strings, some keywords, some search terms that get a lot of volume? And the first thing that you do is you set up your Google Shopping feed, right? Because we will, throughout this video, talk quite a bit about Google Shopping. And since shopping is the lowest hanging fruit for e-commerce businesses, the first thing that you do is you should make a shopping feed that is fairly optimized. And here again, the details of this image are not important. That's why it's so small. It's actually a little sort of example from the previous version of my Google Ads training, where I show like the steps to optimize the shopping feed. But for the beginning, it's just important that you have a shopping feed and that you optimize it to a decent level, right? You want to make sure that the titles of your products and the descriptions and the Google product category and all those things are in place and that they make sense, because you are not spending any money yet. You're just laying the very base foundation, and with those things, with information and ideas about the keywords that you can then put into your product titles, right? Because that's an important thing. You can then start with the next step. And this next step will get you probably to like 10,000 a month already. Remember, of course, these are all like very round and easy numbers, and it could be 5 times more or half as much, but I just give an indication, and like it's more important how they look like relative to each other, of course. The second step that will get you to like about 10,000 possibly is your first shopping campaign setup. And in the beginning, it's important to keep things fairly simple, right? Like the first shopping campaign that you build doesn't have to be super complex with 30 ad groups and 20 product groups and 10 different campaigns and using high, low, medium priority settings all the way through. Here is a very simple example again. Here, as you can see, getting started with the client, and then it just grows step by step by step by step, almost every week. That's like a weekly overview now, right? And you can see here 16,000 Swiss francs spent, which is about, again, 10-15% more in dollars, I think. And every single week we had an improvement in, or most weeks, an improvement in conversion value, and things were just growing with this initial setup. So this particular client had a separate setup running before with performance mags, things like that. And this setup here with the shopping campaign and some other things that we will talk about in a second immediately outperformed this, right? So having the first shopping campaign that just allows you to sell your first few products is very important. And remember, in the previous step, I was telling you that you have to know roughly what some useful keywords are to put in your feed, etc. But at this step, you can already learn at the typical search patterns, and you may also notice a few keywords that people type in that are not relevant for your business, right? So with the initial Google Shopping setup, you already know a little bit about the search behavior of people based on the keyword planner, but now real data will actually come in because you run a campaign, you can look into the search terms, you can from now on literally improve and optimize your campaign and your account every single day with all the insights that you get. But it's important that in the beginning you have a shopping campaign using manual CPC, not overthinking it, putting all your products in and just see what happens. And as I said, with that, with a budget of, let's say, $100 a day, because then you spend $3,000 a month, and then a $10,000 revenue level isn't unrealistic, a 3-point-something ROAS, right? That is something that you can already do without any crazy, complex setups. Of course, not everyone hits it, and of course, that's like a simplified approach here, but I want to emphasize how important it is to have like one base level shopping campaign set up in your account with constant optimization in terms of negative keywords, etc., right? And that, again, we'll talk about in a second. The next step then to hit, let's say, 15,000 from 10 is to look at your top performing keywords and search terms actually from shopping, and try to build a search campaign around that. So that's also another real life report from one of our clients selling jewelry, and those are the few keywords that actually, or again, search terms actually, that perform by far the best in terms of volume and ROAS. And what we did then is we built dedicated search campaigns around them. Of course, you don't need necessarily the search term data from the shopping campaign to do so. Technically, you can go by the Google Keyword Planner, but if you do it with shopping, you know at least that those are the products or the search queries that lead to sales in your store, right? The keyword planner might tell you a million different things, but when you look at real life data that you get from your own campaign, that means that, apparently our store converts ladies' rings search queries fairly well. And that doesn't mean necessarily that your search campaign will do just as good as your shopping campaign, but it's a great way to filter out and use the search terms that you run on shopping to fuel and launch your search campaigns as well. So what we did, again, for this particular client then, build full-scale search campaigns around that using those keywords, sometimes an exact phrase, but these days very often in broad match. Crafting, of course, an ad with proper ad copy, all the ad extensions, much more negative keywords, the device bid adjustments if necessary. Also, again, here starting typically with a manual CPC bid, but then we send people to the categories of that product oftentimes. It depends, of course, on the exact search query. If someone types in, a very specific product model like black TV stand for 45-inch television, and you only have one product in your store that fits that search pattern, then you link people directly to the product. But as you can see, all the search queries that you see here are more like categories in a way, right? And we just think about what's the best URL to send people to on our site or on the client site to then capture them on Google search. And with that, again, you can do it with Keyword Planner first, but it makes more sense to do it from your own Google Shopping data. Once you have at least a few sales per search term, then you can sort of at least assume to some degree that your search campaigns will also perform okay. Of course, again, an oversimplification here. The The next step that might get you to 25,000 then is Google Shopping scaling and optimization. So you start by adding negative keywords over time. As I said, your shopping campaign will get better and better if you keep adding negative keywords, because you will get so many granular search queries that people use to find your products that when you realize, okay, that's not relevant, that's a little bit relevant, but not relevant enough for me yet, by excluding all those keywords, and I'm just describing this, of course, now from a high level, I assume that you know how to add negative keywords to a campaign, right? Else, you can check some other videos before that, but I assume that you know these very basic things and how to take those actions, but I just put them in the context of what you should do first, second, third, etc. So adding negative keywords in the beginning, I recommend to do that at least twice a week, if not maybe even 3 times a week, before you have a negative keyword list of, let's say, a few hundred terms, and then you can do it like less often, once a week, eventually like once every 2 weeks, things like that. But that will effectively scale your shopping campaigns, because it will optimize it, it will increase your conversion rate, it will make it cheaper, which allows you to spend more without breaking the bank, right? So it's scaling and optimization at the same time, so to speak. Then you want to make sure that you optimize your feed for top performers. So initially you set up the product feed for everything. You just made sure that all the products are listed effectively, right? Now you want to test different titles and especially also different product images for products that are performing well, or that get a lot of traffic. Let's say your best-selling product, or let's say your product that gets the most attention and probably also the most sales has a click rate of 0.5%, which is not uncommon with Google Shopping, right? If you manage to get it to 1%, which is also possible, you will have doubled the volume, right? You will have doubled your sales volume, all other things being equal. Let's assume that your conversion rate stays the same. So when I talk about scaling, people always think about doubling the budgets or massively raising their bids. That's not always true. You can essentially scale a shopping campaign by boosting your click-through rate. Again, easier said than done. It's not that you change an image and suddenly it triples the click-through rate, but you can imagine the image has such an important influence on the final click-through rate, actually the biggest influence, along with then price and title, that you have to do that. We have a framework for, which type of image to test and when, and how to see what the actual influence of that was. It can get very complex here as well, of course, but on a basic fundamental level that's relevant when you're just starting out, when you don't need those additional complexities. This is what you have to do, right? You have to regularly check this out and see, okay, a product that gets 500 clicks a day or 200 clicks a day, whatever it might be, it makes a lot more sense to do manual full optimization than for a product that just gets 3 clicks a week anyway. So do it for your top 2, 3, 4, 5 performers, maybe top 10. Definitely time worth spent. Then budgets and bids, right? Keep raising the budgets as long as you can before you do not spend your daily budget, or sorry, this should mean actually until you cannot spend your daily budget anymore, then you should raise your bids. So let's say you spend $50 a day. The moment you spend $50 consistently means you can increase the budget. At some point, let's say your budget is $100 and you only spend 70, 80 a day and that's it. That means that all other things being equal, meaning that you have done negative keywords, you have optimized your feed. If you have done all these things, it means that you probably have to raise your bids to now spend your $100, right? So if you're still running on manual CPC, increase your bids, see if you hit the $100. If you do, okay, now let's increase the budget again, right? Always increase budgets first before you increase bids, because a higher budget at the same bid will give you, the same CPC level, roughly. The moment you increase your bids, that is actually eating into your return on ad spend, right? The moment you have increased bids, that's where things get more expensive on a cost per click level, on a CPA level, where things get less profitable. So budget, bid, that's how you do it. And then isolate high spend products. Now, that's an important part. Don't isolate products to scale them in a separate campaign necessarily, but to allow other products to get some traffic as well. If 1 or 2 products get all the traffic and others barely show up on Google Shopping, but they're, let's say, very different products, isolate those 1 or 2 just so that other products can be sold and at least shown as well. I had so many examples where 2-3 products were getting all the traffic, all the sales, etc., that we thought, okay, those are the best sellers, all the others make no sense. But the moment we, isolated them, and you can do this in a variety of ways. You can another method would be that often makes more sense is if you put the other products in a separate campaign and you keep the winners in the existing one, because now there is the conversion data, right? But the point is you should separate them in some way, because Google spends the money primarily on the campaign level. So if you put those non-spenders in a separate campaign and say, all right, now please spend some money on those as well, I want to test if they work, that's how you can enforce it. You cannot enforce it within the same campaign, really. Unless you run on manual CPC, have different bids for each product, then technically you can do so. But that's an important part. You want to make sure that all your products have some chance to prove themselves, right? Because else you will always assume that those 2-3 products are the only ones that work. Maybe there's a hidden bestseller somewhere. It wouldn't be the first time that I see that. So that is very important. And now the final few thousand to get to the actual 30. That's very straightforward, actually. That's with brand and or retargeting. So I have 2 examples here. A brand campaign, again, Swiss client with 83x ROAS. Of course, brand campaigns are always very profitable, right? What I always tell my client is when you have a brand campaign, you want to maximize the ROAS as much as you possibly can and then forget about it. So whenever we take on new clients, let's say their brand campaign ROAS is 10x, we say, okay, we will try to get it to 25x. And once it's at 25x, we just focus on all the other campaigns. We don't want to spend too much time on brand campaigns, and we also don't want to have a ROAS on brand that is profitable but not sky high, right? You want to have a ROAS on brand campaigns that is so high that it's an absolute no-brainer. If your break-even ROAS is 2 and your brand campaign, so the campaigns where you bid on your own brand terms, your brand name, is only 3.5x, not really good. It's profitable, but brand campaigns are only worth it if they are exceptionally high in ROAS. And then also retargeting campaign. Now, little disclaimer here. Retargeting campaigns are not as effective on Google as they are on Facebook, but you can still make them work, either in a display or, what I actually recommend a bit more, in discovery campaigns. So here you see a discovery campaign where we retarget people for 30 days. We have a target CPA in this case, even though normally target ROAS is the bidding strategy of choice with e-commerce, but here we're using target CPA. We have a ROAS of 2.6, which is not huge. This client is very profitable with like breaking even with 1.7. So 2.6 is okay. Nothing phenomenal, I must admit, but it's just something, it's a setup that just works, right? And we just keep it, even though it's not producing crazy profits, but it makes sense for us. So that's something very important, that at least you try it out. It may not work for you. I have many clients where retargeting on Google just doesn't work, and then that's okay. But those 2 elements, they can get you those few remaining thousands of dollars to hit that 30,000 milestone, right? And of course, as I said, these points are just an example. They are very round, they are very specific, but it might be completely different for you. The first campaign might get you to 30K already, or it dies at 3 and you have to do the next step then, but you get the idea. So that is what will sort of get the additional few thousand into your account, and then you can take it from there. Speaking of taking it from there, afterwards, of course, there are many, many other things that you can do. So let's start here. You can get search campaigns going with like broader keywords, right? You can add more things besides just your absolute best performers. You can scale them with higher budgets. You can come along with a PMAX campaign now, which I don't recommend to start with, but you can use it at some point when you exhausted all the inventory and you say, now I want to really take things to the next level, give it a try, but very careful here. I have a bunch of videos about Performance Max, so feel free to check them out. But PMAX isn't always ideal. Then you can run discovery campaigns using shopping, like shopping discovery campaigns where you show the products, but on the discovery network. So like display banner ads, so to speak, right? Standard discovery campaigns, and potentially even YouTube. Now, what these 3 to 4 things have in common is that they require some capital. They require you to not interfere all the time. Like you have to say, okay, I dedicate $3,000 now to that discovery campaign, or $1,000 or something, and you don't turn it off after $50 without a sale. That's why they come later. It's nothing that I recommend right away. Plus, ideally, you have some conversion data at that point, so all the shopping and search campaigns that you ran to this point will influence the performance of that discovery and also YouTube campaign a lot. That's why those are, next steps Of course, everything that I said before that can technically get you way beyond 30K already. It can get you to 100K, right? But those are some, next level steps with higher budgets, conversion data, etc., that when you go through all of them in that order, there is a fairly low chance that you are massively overspending without seeing any return on that. And therefore, it's definitely what I recommend to see the best results. So if you want to go the extra mile now and take things further, first of all, I hope this video was already helpful. If so, feel free to leave a like, comment below which of these things you've already done. But if you now say, hey, I want to really go deeper into that, I have a Google Ads training specifically for e-commerce that you can find in the description, where you learn everything that I said, but in much more detail with real life examples, how to write ad copy, how to structure shopping campaigns, how to scale them, when to scale them, you name it, everything we said and talked about and much more. It's completely ready for 2023. Or if you say, nope, I don't want to, let me put myself somewhere else. So if you say, hey, I don't want to deal with that, can you please do it for me? Then what we also do is we run Google Ads campaigns for e-commerce brands. We are currently spending about 650,000 or so a month for our clients. Every week we learn something new that we can then apply to your brand right away. So if you say you want to do that and you want to really skyrocket your growth, then check the other link in the description. So do it yourself, or we can do it for you. Or of course you can simply like the video and that's it. That's also fine. So thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more Google Ads and marketing content for e-commerce. And with that being said, I look forward to see you in the next video again. Bye-bye.